facing head-on the emotions beneath the surface as we bridge from an old world of confusion and lack to a beautiful new world of freedom, abundance, and love with straightforward truth and inspired hope is what you'll find on The Charla Anderson Show. Collector and connector of fascinating people. And everyone is fascinating. Here's your host, Charla Anderson.
Good day, beautiful, beautiful souls. This is Charla Anderson, host of the Charla Anderson Show, collector and connector of fascinating people. And everyone is fascinating, especially you. Today, we are so excited. We're on I love my partners with winwinwomen.com and winwinwomen.tv. I love my partners with Podetize. We're having Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, all these streaming services for this show. And we're just learning, still learning through it here. And I'm very grateful that you would take the time to listen and to learn and to be encouraged and to have some hope, which is what we're all about here. And so we're going to have what I always do is a little breathing exercise, a little mini vacation for about 22 seconds. In just a moment, I want you to know who Misty Gilbert is, and we'll be introducing her and her incredibly strong story of overcoming and being just driven to have an incredible life instead of the life that she was raised to have. Love that. And we're going to meet her in just a minute. But first, we're always going to do this breathing meditation at the beginning of my show. And so what we're going to do is breathe in 7 seconds of calm, hold for 4 seconds, and then breathe out 11 seconds of gratitude. So if you'll just join me for that, we're going to get a little bit more centered. It helps me a lot, and I hope it helps you. So here we go. 7 seconds of calm coming right in. Hold. Release. Gratitude. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love that. Whatever caused me to start doing that, it blesses me, and I hope it blesses you. And, that is something you can take with you all day long, and just take that little breath and a mini meditation that will settle you when things are a little stressed. We're in a stressful world right now. So every little bit helps, right? So today I'm so excited. I have a friend, Misty Gilbert. I believe we met 10 years ago, maybe 11, 2010,
2010. Mm-hmm.
I think it was 2010. I was new to networking. I thought she was the most, she was so focused on building her business and doing a good job. She was just, we became friendly. I don't know that we became friends back then as much, just because I'm like, and she was like, that's kind of the truth, right? So we met and networking and became, just friends and did a few things together. And over the years, we weave in and out of keeping in touch. And I think Misty's got a story that I actually invited her to be on 2 consecutive shows, because her story, all of her stories, but her life, which is her story, has been one of incredible overcoming at the very least. And I believe, Misty, when we met, and we'll start here, you had a horrific childhood growing up in a home of religious cultism or abuse, I believe. And she has a TED Talk called The Art of Authenticity. You must listen to it, because we're not going to go into all that on this, because she's already told us that. But I believe when I met you, you had never cut your hair, and you'd never worn pants, and you had not ever worn makeup.
That is correct.
Okay. So that was only 10, 12 years ago, whatever it is.
No, it's 2023, so it would have been 13 years ago. And yeah,
Whoa.
you met me before I began the transformational journey.
Yes, but you had begun your transformational journey because you up and left a horrific situation that you were imprisoned in, basically.
Yes.
And showed up in Texas with virtually nothing. So tell us about that and why Texas? I know why I would do Texas, but you were in California.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Yes, I was born and raised in California. I am 47 now, so to give context of time frames, September 1997 at the age 20. I came to Texas to visit my sister who had moved out 3 months prior on her 18th birthday. She moved out July 1997. And being very close to her, I missed her, wanted to see her. My parents didn't want me to fly by myself because that's, again, part of the religious in framework is women are not independent. They're controlled and always protected and provided for. And so traveling by yourself was not advised or recommended or authorized, if you will. So found an older couple to come to Texas to see my sister for a Christian camp retreat. I was born and raised into a religious organization. I call it an organization, even though it wasn't formally organized with the government. It was just an establishment that it was a cult. I was born and raised into it. My mom was born and raised into it. So I came to Texas September 97 to see my sister at a Christian camp retreat. While I was here, one of the ministers wanted to have a conversation with me and verify some things that my sister had been sharing in her 3 months or 2.5 months of so far living in Texas. And I committed to answering their questions without going into a lot of detail because my mom had made me promise on this trip to make sure that I guarded myself in the home situation and not to get into any issues because those were their issues. They weren't things that they wanted me involved in. So I had a lot of fear about having a discussion with a minister about my home life, but I committed to answering yes or no questions. So that initial meeting was 5 hours where he planted some seeds besides asking me questions. And it made me think. And during the time that I was in Texas for about a week, I became emotionally disturbed. First time I was away from my mother on my own as an adult. I'd been away from her as a child once before for a week, but never outside of those two circumstances, never. I had an unsettling feeling the night before I was supposed to leave, sitting in church. I just knew I didn't want to go home. I didn't know what my options were. I didn't know if I could even have any options, really, even though they had planted seeds that they would not recommend me going back to my home life environment when they learned my situation of extreme abuse, mental, physical, emotional, spiritual. But at the same time, I had a lot of fear of making that step because my mom had made a lot of threats and statements, and I knew she would carry them out. And so, long story short, we called my family that night, my parents, and the ministers were on the other line of the phone call to my parents. And my parents did not know that. And they heard their reaction to me when I said I wanted to extend my trip because I was having an amazing time. I really was in some ways, truthfully, I wasn't. It was a gut-wrenching week here, but it did, open me up to the chance of looking in the face that I could leave the prison I had been in for 20 years. I could begin life on my own. I would have to have the courage to do so. Nobody could do it for me. There were people who were going to support me, encourage me. And when I say support, not financially or providing me any type of resources other than wisdom, counseling, encouragement.
I didn't know any of that part about your sister because I'm guessing that your parents were traumatized by her leaving at 18 and you leaving at 20. I'm sure they were traumatized by that.
They were
scared because and she had literally just walked out and moved, and they
my sister planned hers for a year. Me and my brother were not aware of her move until 2 weeks prior to it taking place. When she would go to the grocery store to run errands for mother or pick up something, she would use a payphone and call a minister. She got a prepaid phone card so nothing could be tracked. And she would call them and explain the home life situation, what were her options. She wanted to leave. She explained my parents' belief and support of women needing to be married to leave the home. The other things that my parents really approved of were helping the elderly and the mothers that didn't have a husband left with kids. So the strategy for my sister was to move to Texas to care for an elderly lady where she would live there and take her to her hair appointments, doctor appointments, things like that. So though it was a shock to my parents, ministry came to my parents' house July 1997, presented this scenario and recommendation that my sister be allowed to do this. And my parents didn't have the ability to say no because she turned 18 that very day. And so my sister had been planning. She got rid of a lot of her stuff, condensed everything to 5 boxes. And so when the final discussion was over and my mom's like, okay, well, let's go pack your stuff. And she goes to the closet and my sister's things are already there. Then my mom came unglued. She realized there had been strategy and everybody had been involved in this. Me and my brother found out, like I said, 2 weeks prior. My sister explained what she'd been working on, what her opportunity was, asked if we were angry with her or upset, or did we support her? We both adamant, we support you. She said, when I leave, your life is going to get more miserable. And we knew that. But we still didn't waver in the fact that if you have a chance to leave, go.
And well, in your TED Talk, and I re-listened to it, it was done in 2015?
January 2019.
2019. Okay. About 3 years ago. Yeah. You describe your bits and pieces of your childhood. And then when you literally were raped and had zero support, in fact, became the whipping boy. It was your fault for, and no support, and then ostracized from every single thing you'd ever known and ever, even your towels couldn't touch, your towel couldn't be in the same space as your sister's towel because it's you're contaminated now. Your mom, it just sounds so incredibly brutal and horrific. And that's why everyone should listen to. It's called The Art of Authenticity.
Yes, The Art of Authenticity, how to show the real you. I share my story and how I lived in hiding, talking about my childhood and the trauma.
You were threatened with death if you spoke about it.
Mm-hmm. I was on more than one occasion. And, due to the high level of abuse that my mother did initiate with us, me and my siblings, we had different experiences. My brother, as I refer to in my TED Talk, had his feet burned with matches 3 different times. I never had that experience, but I had other forms of physical abuse, whether I was thrown up against the wall with hands being put around my neck and screamed in my face, or once I was raped and they were paranoid that I had AIDS. They wanted me to get AIDS testing. And so there was a lot of physical abuse sitting in the waiting room at the county health department. She would slap me. She would pinch me. She would punch me. She did it on the drive there. She treated me, just in an awful way. And she told me I deserved this because of what I'd done to her. And so knowing when my sister left, that these things were going to only escalate because Mom's was going to take her anger out on me, I had a lot of decisions to make. And so though I knew I wanted out of that home, I also knew I was risking a lot. And after my trip to Texas and extending my stay, I immediately started looking for a job, created a resume, made plans to move in next door to the minister that was helping me make this transition. And we came to California simply to get my things and have a discussion with my parents and leave. And
so you did see her again?
I did come back to California. We drove all night out here. And then the night before meeting my parents, we called and let them know I was in town and would be up the next day to have a meeting. My parents knew what was going down by this point, even though we didn't talk about it because of how things had gone just 3 months prior with my sister, right? And so, but I had a lot of fear of and practicality of things that had to be discussed and strategized because of the maliciousness of my mother. I had things on consignment in a craft store that I needed to pick up and get my final check. I needed to go by my employer, who I'd abruptly quit. I extended my stay and then wasn't going back to my job. I had to go by them and face them and get my final check. Then I had to go by the bank, cash that check, and then close my bank account that my parents were on. Both my parents were co-signers on that account. They would not let me have any banking accounts or credit cards that they were not attached to. So there's a lot of fear in strategy that we had to plan this, so they had very little time to execute. We wanted to be up there as soon as the bank opened at 10 o'clock. Like, there were so many things that we did en route to my parents' house. It's kind of crazy, but we drove to my parents' house in an 18-passenger van with no bench seats in it. The only seats that were there were the driver and the shotgun. The rest of us sat in lawn chairs in that, because unlike my sister, I wasn't packed. None of my stuff was ready. And though I didn't have tons of things, when you're trying to go into a situation that you don't know how much time you're going to have or what you're going to be allowed to grab or not grab, I mean, there was a lot of apprehension. And so we did our best to strategize to be able to take all my things. I had an armoire, I had a desk, I had a dresser, actually no desk, a bookcase and a dresser and a lamp. And then, all the things that were in those things, my clothes. And initially started with a conversation with my parents in the living room, these two couples, me and my dad. My mom was not home, which was also a drama way to, deal with the situation. She wasn't there. She came in about 30 minutes into the conversation through the back door, carrying a hymnal with her hands crossed over it, tears running down her face. And her opening words were that you have utterly crushed me and your disappointment to me. And I'm not happy.
She'd already torn up your little baby pictures and said you weren't even in her part of her family anymore. She didn't want you.
They didn't consider me the firstborn anymore. They had changed my name from Misty and called me Ethel. And so it had already ostracized me from the family. So, the amazing thing is, Charla, though, growing up in that environment, you didn't talk back. You didn't express yourself. You learned just to stuff everything inside. And so in this conversation where there's a pointed question from my mom in front of these minister and their wives, why do you want to do this? On the fly, no plans, I said, there is no love, peace, harmony, forgiveness, or happiness in this home. I've tried your way for 20 years and it hasn't worked. I'm going to go do something else. I know because she made a curse and a death sentence over me that if I lived and moved out of the high desert in California, I physically would die. So, she's like, do you realize that when you leave, you're going to die, because Texas is full of pollen and all these things that are going to kill me. And I told her, I said, if she said I would die in 2 years. And my words to her were, if I only get 2 years, I will take it.
A freedom, right? Just really a freedom. Wow. So these are parts, I mean, I've heard bits and pieces over the years, and we've visited off and on, and you have that. So I didn't know how you got to Texas or why and all of that. And I'm so grateful you did, because we get you.
Yes.
And to overcome what is just brutal abuse compared in all those instances, physical and everything else, you somewhere along the line, now, before, like we said earlier, before I met you, you were still very much into the right and wrong, or the religious world, which is God in a box. There is, and you were in that, you may not have been, I don't even know, were you really into the religious world, or were you just still not, you'd never worn pants, you'd never worn makeup, you'd never cut your hair. And when you cut your hair, and it was so cute, and it was so fun to see you start shifting out of that and evolving into Misty, right? Our Misty.
Yes. Yeah. When you met me, I was still very entrenched in the religion. I believed I was doing the right thing. The way I was raised, I was raised that the cult I was in had the truth. Everybody else out there that proclaimed to be Christians really weren't, because, like you, Charlotte, I was nice to you. I was kind to you, but I had the internal belief that you really didn't know God, could not have a relationship with God, because, I mean, your hair's like a boy, and you wear makeup, and you wear men's clothing because you're wearing pants. Like, I was nice to you. I would not be rude to you, but I didn't believe that you really had God or knew God or had a relationship relationship with him could even possibly be saved, because you're being a hypocrite to his word and the trainings that I was given. Like in Deuteronomy, for instance, it says in the Bible that women should not wear the apparel of men. So they took that to be literal, which meant women wear dresses and men wear pants, and there's no cross contamination of any of these boundaries. It was so extensive, we didn't even swim together in a swimming pool. There was girls only and boys only. There was a lot of activities were never of both, sex.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you met me, I was still long denim skirt, long hair past my butt, no makeup, no earrings, no fingernail polish, no dating, no TV, no movies, no Christmas, no Easter, no big jewelry, like all the things. I was living in the parameters that they set for me. And yes, it was God in a box. And so the choice to leave that in 2013 was, again, a second point in my life, a radical decision making, because when you leave that fellowship, just like my parents did to me prior, you're excommunicated, you're annihilated, you're rejected, you're abandoned, you're ignored. They will have nothing to do with you. Like literally, if they were to see you in the grocery store or Walmart or Office Depot, they would walk by you like they did not know you. And they take that from scripture where it talks about marking to avoid somebody so much so that you don't even eat with them. They took that literal. And that is how they treated the people who left the fellowship. So my choice.
Can I ask you a question? So the people your sister was with and this pastor, these guys that were helping you, were they also in that exact same religion? But
yeah. So when I left,
they weren't quite as extreme.
They weren't as extreme in some of the things of my mother, as far as like how she treated me after being raped or things like that. But as far as the beliefs of what I'm talking to you about, as far as how women were looked at, what we were allowed to do, no, that was culturally everybody. Were there some people who didn't hold to them and did stuff behind the back of the church leaders and did their own thing? Of course. So my parents were very law-abiding, rule-following, right? And they were extremists of the cult. But the foundation of it, as far as how women were to how they were treated, there was a lot of elevation to be a Proverbs 31 woman for the sake of a man, to elevate a man. There are points in the Proverbs 31 where, like, she goes and buys a field and sells her wares in the city gates. They don't agree with any of that. Okay. But that she would rise up early and do all her chores and teach her family how to sew and clean and cook. No, those things were excellent. And that's where
they're cotton picking out of the Bible and fixing it into their own little man-made religion. So what I want to bring you to is what I love. Now we're going to come back to this transition time, but what I love about you, so many things, but you went through this horrific religion. So many people, when they step out of a bad religious experience, and religion to me, the definition is return to bondage. But you and I love God. Yes. We have a relationship which religion doesn't allow for. And so so many people just deny that there's a God, or, he was so bad. But I know that if God is love, he can't be not love. He is love. And he loves every single last one of his creation. And we sometimes don't know how to receive that. So I want to know that little transition time. How did you maintain a relationship with God? And did you turn on him at all at some point?
My choice in how I moved forward was simply just like I did with my parents. I made a decision to leave the family, and there was no looking back. And I was going to do the work to move past that, no matter what happened in the future. So in 2013, over Easter weekend, the preacher was speaking and said a phrase in his conversation about why we don't celebrate Easter, that we have an intolerant God. And it grated so hard on me, I just couldn't deal with it. Now, in the context of what he was saying is, in other words, if you celebrate a pagan holiday that God does not endorse, he's not going to give you grace for that, right? That's going to be a sin against you when you get to heaven, that you'll be judged in your wood, hay, and stubble. that's their mindset. That's how they operate. That's how they work. But that's not obviously now how I see God. But when I was there, but it was awakening. It was an awakening for me. And I had such grief over it. I decided I needed to stay away from church for a little bit to calm my spirit and figure out what was truth for me. And I decided I was going to relook at everything I had believed up until this point and decide what was truth and let it shake out, me and God. And I had no intentions of leaving the church. I just was going to take a little bit of a break, recenter myself, because I didn't want to lose all my friends. These were people that were my life. I didn't have a life outside of the cult. Even though I went to networking, I didn't have relationships. I didn't go to dinner with you.
You were looking for somebody that needed account solutions.
Yeah.
You were looking for business, and you were building
for business. And I networked for a business purpose. I didn't create family or connections or friends through this. It was simply a business. But that's also how they raised us, right? We were very sheltered, so we wouldn't get in outside influence. They controlled us. So that decision was an unraveling that summer, where I read a book called Toxic Faith by Stephen Arterburn. And it was given to me by a client a year prior, that I hadn't even read yet. But I read that book, and I watched a movie, 7 Days in Utopia, which is actually filmed here in Utopia, Texas. It's based on a true story about a young man struggling with his relationship with his father, who's a golfer, has a wreck, ends up out in Utopia. An old man takes him under his wing, shows him how to practice the game of golf, and deals with the inner struggle going on in his mind and heart. The essence of the movie is see it, feel it, trust it. See God, feel God, trust God. See the puck, feel the puck, trust the puck. See the vision of where you're going in your life, feel the vision of where you're going in your life, trust the vision of where you're going in life. It was a radical, life-changing moment for me, because I had never seen and felt and trusted God that way. My seeing and feeling and trusting God was through the eyes of the Bible, interpreted by the religious leaders. My seeing and feeling God was what I was told. He loves you, but you have to accept him into your heart. He loves you, but you have to follow his will.
Conditional. It's conditional. And God isn't conditional.
No, so I had the opportunity to start unraveling that. And in that unraveling process, I started learning a lot about myself and learning about who really God was. And I started seeing him in ways I had never seen him, which was the most inspirational, motivating, and life-changing experience when you don't have God in a box and you start feeling him outside that box. It was such extreme liberation. Like, I don't even know how to describe to you, because it was in everyday moments that I started having an awakening and unraveling these layers of lies. And in that movie, 7 Days in Utopia, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. You may not resonate with it being so life-changing, but where I was in my journey, it was for me. And I walk my coaching clients through it because I feel it has such power for us to SFT, see it, feel it, trust it. And I started carrying that out. I even went April 5th, 2013. I went to the site in Utopia, Texas, where you can tour just like it is in the movie. And at the end of the movie, he buries lies from his father. And they allow you to do that. And I did that. I wrote a letter to God. I put it in an envelope. I sealed it. I put it in the cemetery. I put on my grave, SFT. I wrote about it on my blog 10 years ago this year, to be honest with you. And these little things were kind of like in the Bible I look at when they built an altar, right? They came to a place, they recognized truth, and they made a pillar, and they moved forward. And that's just what I did. This was used in my life. I grabbed onto the truth. I let go of the lies, and I kept moving forward. My transformational journey, I feel, really began the next level in 2014 when I did a conference in Salt Lake City, Utah called Live Big with Gerald
I was going to say live big or be big or something. Yeah, I remember that was everywhere around here.
It was huge. Yeah. He helped me to see the fact that my parents had given me a gift, but I didn't have to receive it. The gift that they had given me was their viewpoint of me, but I didn't have to take that. That gift actually was a gift to me to move past these changes and get on into my life and live intentionally in freedom. And I did it January 2014 and then came back for a second round, March 2014. And in between those two is when I cut my hair. And so it was also part of that transformational journey because I was now getting an outward look that was different than what I identified with for 37 years. My coach challenged me to do online dating to get over my fear of men. So I'd wore a wedding band on my left hand for 16 years to keep men away. Not that it does, but it gave me that, feeling of being completely
empowered. I have an excuse. I have a, yeah.
Well, and of my own choice, like it made me feel like I had a little bit of protection and a bit of, I didn't lie if somebody said to me, I worked in the medical field at that time and a drug rep said to me, "Hey, what's your husband do?" I would tell him, "I don't have a husband. I just wear this, on my left hand." I didn't get into why. I just went forward with it. But it made me feel like, I had power. Nobody was going to rape me again. Nobody was going to be in my life to control me. But I had fear of men. I had fear because of how I saw my parents' relationship and knowing I didn't want that. I had fear because of being raped. I had fear of all the controlling men that I'd known my entire life in this religion. Yeah, there were some very nice fatherly figures too. I don't want to paint everybody as a complete jerk, but most of the men were very domineering and didn't have respect for women, did not treat them like queens. We were workhorses. We were for their pleasure. Like it wasn't a dual relationship built the way God really does.
No partnership.
No partnership.
And that's a huge piece in my world. I'm not doing it if it's not a mutual partnership anymore. So each of these opportunities that I worked with a coach or something came into my world to learn from, whether it was the book Toxic Faith or the movie 7 Days in Utopia, I was able to take the challenge and work on myself. And every little bit of it has grown me to be where I am today. It's still an unraveling. I've only been out of the church for 10 years. And when that has been your foundation for 37 years, you even subconsciously still have things that will show up that you don't even recognize are there because of the imprint in the programming. I mean, and you just blossomed. And so where you got so raw and real is authenticity, and that's your talk. But you bare your soul. If somebody asks a question or you're not feeling something, you're an incredible storyteller, incredible writer, incredible bearing your soul to Facebook. I'll just say Facebook is where I find it most of the time, but it's going to be in a book. It's going to be a movie, most likely. Yes. You have such a incredible gift.
Yes.
To express authenticity. And it's very awkward at times for the reader to, because you're like, this is what I feel. And this is how I'm dealing with it. And I'm just always in awe of your inspiration, your intentional.
Well,
intentional.
It's intentional and it's courageous. And even at times it's very courageous even for me to do it. I push the boundaries and the envelope of culture into what is supposed to be talked about on social media platforms and what isn't. I write about my experiences. I share how I see something. I share my struggles. I share where there's conflict and what I'm still trying to grasp. And I share my victories and how I work through them. The overcoming is a constant thing when something like this has been ingrained in you. Like it's a part of my DNA, right? Like to separate me, I've had to recreate a new identity, but I've had to believe that can be recreated and yet value and honor who I was before without making me wrong, bad, a criminal, a horrible person for being born and raised into this belief system and living it. I mean, even with my own family, my sister left the church group when I was 28, 9 years before I did. When she left, I had nothing to do with her. I did exactly what everybody did to me when I left.
Okay? Do you see her at all now?
I don't. We don't have a relationship, but my siblings have not worked through childhood traumas. And my sister currently is very angry at God, at times borders on being an atheist. And so where I'm at now is I'm not the person to help my siblings. They need to go their own journey and have outside people away from the experience that's not going to trigger them and bring memories.
Did your brother leave your parents?
My brother's in a community home, last I knew, in California. So he struggled with drugs and in and out of jail and prison due to theft or attempts of suicide. I mean, he's a lot of things gone on in his life. He's been raped by men. He's had a very hard experience and is very depressed, bipolar, lives on medication just to exist.
It seems to me that most people coming out of what you're talking about would do what he's doing, not what you're doing. It seems if you look at the big picture, the world, we've had all this stuff and we handle it instead of working through it. We, kind of suppress it and find
we suppress it. We create coping methods, which lead to addictions, codependent enabling relationships. To answer your question, how do I still have a close connected relationship to God? Why do I still believe in God? I'm not sure I know how to answer that any way outside of I was willing to see how could I see God in a different lens, and how could I not turn something that was a horrible experience into a contaminated viewpoint. How could I still believe that God was who he says he was, even though my parents and the religion and the cult that I was entrenched in didn't see it the way I did? How could I let life speak to me and God speak to me? And that's where I'm at. Is my belief in God the same as when I was in the cult? Absolutely not. Do I still believe in God? I do. But even some of the beliefs I've held up until maybe, say, even 2 years ago, I don't hold anymore. And I believe even some of the things I think now about God will change as I continue to evolve and grow in my relationship with him. I believe he's in everybody, not just the people who ask them to save them and come into their heart like we're told to pray. There's truth that has come through Bible studies I've done, living experiences, challenges I've done to myself, like 2014, 2013, 2012, I think, is when I went to my first church outside of the cult, which also played into me leaving, attending other Bible studies, attending women Bible studies, because women, in the way I was raised, were not allowed to study the Bible, discuss it, talk through things. This was for men. And so there's a lot that I got to experience. I did, workshops with women of faith, Beth Moore, Priscilla Shire, things like that. But I've moved on even beyond that culture, because I even see God beyond the box they keep him in. When
so
God
religion is not in
it's not in a box, but people put him in a box.
Yes.
People put God in a box because they can't deal with the vastness of God.
Mm-hmm.
And when he says it is finished, I don't believe that means just for the people who have asked him into their heart. And so there's a lot that God is in every living, breathing thing. There is nothing God is not in. The difference is God's in my brother, my sister, but they're not awakened to him. They're not connected to him, and he is not permeating their presence because they've lost that connection. But he's still there. He's still in them. They just don't resonate with it. They don't feel the energy. They don't feel the connection.
I was raised I wouldn't say anywhere near what you are, but we didn't have music. We didn't have, all these man-made rules and regulations that they pull out and manipulate the scripture somehow or another to fit what they want. I had my, an aunt that didn't even have, they couldn't have a kitchen in their church. They couldn't have fellowship. The rules and regulations that keep us, ultimately, I believe it's a bigger agenda somehow to keep us controlled and get the masses, to keep us, following and divided, probably. I believe that's very much the case. So you're one in you're rare to be able to, and my evolution too has been a little bit in the last decade or so, just going, you know what? I just need to be the creator. He lives in me. And that means I get to, I am him as well. So we're, that has always been a little bit blasphemous in my upbringing, but he says he's in us. So, even that they tried to twist, right, to where it's not really.
I think some of it is Christians, quote unquote, religion, quote unquote, has a very difficult time understanding. And I hate even to use the term unconditional love, because love can't be anything. It can't be conditional or unconditional, or it's not love. Like either way, love is love. There is no conditions and there's no unconditional, because love can't be conditioned and it can't be unconditional. It's just love. But for sake of how we relate to it, they don't really get grace, unconditional love, unconditional mercy, unconditional grace, ever ending. And it's hard to understand that he met the woman at the well and showed her the path. Did she change? Religion says she did, but there's no description of that in the Bible. There's no knowledge other than she went back to her community and said, this man knew everything about me. And so there's a lot of things. The
assumption is that she would change if somebody did that.
She would, but if realistically, like in today's society, if you were in a relationship with 5 men, one's probably paying you child support, or 2 or 3, one's providing your food, one's providing your housing, maybe paying for your car. Did she go home that night and leave that establishment, or kick all of them out, or cut all of their resources? Of course not. That is not even realistic to think as a human would do that.
But I bet she felt differently. She felt loved.
She felt loved. And whether she changed or not, to me, is irrelevant. Same thing with the thief on the cross. People say that, he asked God into his heart. That is not what it's recorded. Doesn't mean he didn't. What he said is, I want to be with you in paradise. And God said, you will, and you are. So a lot of things get twisted, and it's hard for religion to read a scripture, that is very hardcore and think that it can be anything other than those sentences. So the more that I understood and experienced God in my life, the more I realized he was more omnipresent, more Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, than anything had ever been conveyed to me. And there was no way I could grasp it. My life also changed with a sermon series by Stephen Furtick out of North Carolina with Elevation Church. The series was a 5-part series called God's Will is Whatever. 4 of the 5 is spoken by him, and the 5th is a different preacher that took the session. But the essence of that series was, no matter where you go or what you do, God is with you. If you go down a highway and you have an option on this trip to take the first exit A, you get down that exit, you had a flat tire, you're going to say you should have taken exit B. If you had taken exit B and you got stuck in, and I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact examples, I'm just using one. These were examples he had, but the scenario might have been a little different. But exit B, you're stuck in traffic for 2 hours. Then you would have said you should have taken exit A. Religion's always second guessing. Are you doing God's will for your life? And his point was, if you take exit A, God is with you and you're doing his will. If you take exit B, God is with you and you're doing his will. He is in you. You can see him, you can feel him, you can trust him. He doesn't care what exit you take. He wants you to love him with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, with all your strength. That is it. That is it. He's not looking for you to make sure you get to exit A and you do everything right. But I was raised, if you got a flat tire, you got stuck in traffic in those 2 examples, you might need to reevaluate, are you doing God's will for your life? That's how I was raised.
So it's so fear-based. And when we understand that there's nothing but the 2 emotions, love and fear, and if there's a pendulum, and anything that puts you on the fear side is not love and fear. Love is God. And if God is love, he can't be not love. I said that early in, and so we're talking about that same thing. But if you've got this fear, then instead of standing in the confidence that you are exactly where you are right this second, where else do you have to be? And because this is where you are, you might as well accept it and love it, even if it's a horrific circumstance.
Yeah.
Right this second, it's the only place you have to take the next step from, right? So this is all we've got. And we might as well embrace it in that moment so that we can receive, take the next right step.
It's hard to do, though, when you are reading scriptures, Bible, documentation that's, I'm sorry, very fear-based. Redeem the time because the days are evil. I don't believe the days are evil. God created this world and he said it is good. Everything he created, he said, is good. study the ant, thou sluggard, and consider her ways and be like it. Like all this driven, redeem the time, be like an ant, hurry, hustle, prepare for heaven, get a bunch of, jewels and for your crown, no wood, hay, and stubble. All this striving for performance, for value, for connection is not love-based.
He also said, be still and know, but they don't preach that very much anymore. He also said, you can do what I did and even more. Jesus said, you can do what I did and even more. That means it's so funny how this comes up almost in every one of my shows, because it's so, we don't even recognize that we've been given the power and the authority.
Yes.
The authority, we have the authority. We don't have to get second guess. We get to do what we want to do. We're not
a knockoff. He said we are made in his image, which means we are identical to him. We are identical to him. There's just so much too when you take a step back and go, why do I believe that? That was a Bible study I did, which challenged me in a lot of my beliefs. When I look at, even you start in Genesis 1, why was it called the tree of knowledge of good and evil? If it was supposed to be something that created death in us, why wasn't it called the tree of death? There's just a lot of things that get twisted. God wanted us to live in a world of duality, right and wrong, good and evil, dark and light. He created everything in nature. We turn hurricanes, tornadoes, lightning as bad things. God called all of that good, every last bit of it. And yet we have a hard time understanding how we can be in this presence, in this duality, and truly be centered and God be in us. It's culturally, I don't care what ethnicity, what religious faith, they all have it at the crux. There is this performing for value, for connection. You have to be perfect. There's this subtleness that you're a sinner and you're bad and you're a horrible person. And he never said that. He said what he built was good.
Yes. And I love this conversation. It's so different than what I thought we were going to do, which is, thank you. I got this I saw this verse this morning, Romans 8:18, and the pain that you've been feeling can't compare to the joy that's coming. And in this world we're in right now, it felt like a very hopeful statement. And I just thought I would share that. We've only got about 10 minutes here. So, I told you it goes really fast. And this whole first segment, that I'm grateful that you're going to be here again next week, because we've not even scratched the surface of where I think we have opportunity to.
Yeah.
But you have a, I wanted this first one to just kind of, where have you been? How'd you get where you are? How do you have the confidence and the stand on that stage and speak those horrific things that happened to you, and knowing your mother is still probably hating you, I assume, and still have the courage and confidence and come out. You've got a successful business. You've done incredible workshops. I saw you're having, what's it called? I've got it here somewhere.
The Entrepreneur Manual.
A virtual workshop next week to help business owners with their do the right thing. And the statistics on there, so many businesses fail, right? So you have a passion and a gift to help small businesses primarily. So we went through all that where you've gotten this change, and then, you're on your path, and you're all of a sudden we're driving to Austin in your, Black Beauty, your Corvette, and boom. Well, how many months ago was that where you have a totaled your Corvette that you love, and literally doesn't it feel miraculous how you were outside of that car looking at it?
Completely. That happened January 5th, 2023. So just 5 months ago, 6 months ago.
Total that thing. And
and the miracle, number one, to be alive. And then number two, with very few injuries, really, for what I should have sustained. Our complete God moment, because I literally thought that I was going to die. Like I said, my final words were, this is it. Because I had my cruise set at 75 miles an hour, had just crested a hill, probably was going closer to 80 because when you're on cruise, it kind of propels you forward. They pulled out in front of me. I said, no, you didn't just do this. I screamed at them, go, go, go. And as soon as I did that, I'm hitting them and I say, this is it. T-boned them right on the side, a truck in a long cargo trailer, right at dusk, 6 o'clock on a Thursday night. And, hit the trailer, it pulled away from me, rebounded, then smacked the right side of the windshield, the left rear tire. And then I went airborne. I landed in the grassy median, which is also a miracle. I could have been on 287, stuck there, or upside down, and my canvas top wouldn't have saved me for shit. I could have been stuck on the freeway and an 18-liter would have come right along and creamed my ass. There's just so many ways that whole experience could have gone differently. The hood could have come straight through and sliced off my neck because it was dangling off the side of the car. So just so many ways, no broken bones, no punctured organs, no internal bleeding. Yes, massive internal and external bruising. Yes, PTSD. Yes, for 6 weeks, my bladder was so inflamed I couldn't feel when I needed to pee and I was peeing on myself. A lot of challenges. Lost 4 really big clients, about 40% of my business, couldn't work during tax season. Unbelievable stuff going on behind the scenes. But to tie this back into your original question a little bit about God and the challenges, I chose to try to see God in a whole new light every day, kind of take the chalkboard, wipe it clean, and be engaged with God today and see him and feel him and trust him. That movie really propelled me. And then later on in my journey, I believe it was 2016, working with a spiritual coach, and I made a challenge to myself to not read the Bible for 30 days and to sit every day and spend time with God, no scriptures, because I was told the Bible is the word of God, but it says in the beginning was the word and the word was God, and that is not the Bible. So the more I removed everything of people, religion, philosophies, concepts, beliefs away and sit with me in God, I got a new perspective. And that is what's propelled me forward. To tell my story is a basis of I'm going to begin my life by being courageous. And so, yes, I hired and signed a contract a month ago with a videographer. We're going to start working on preparing my story into a movie. People have asked me, what do you think your mom's going to think about this? I'm not doing this for my mom. This has nothing to do with my mom. If my mom gets a hold of it or somebody shares that with her, she's going to be freaking livid mad. This isn't about my mom. This is my life. It's my journey. It's my story. And I believe people need to hear the message because there's too many people who are stuck in fear, shame, guilt, regret, unable to move forward past these bondages of divorce, of a physical illness, of a gender issue, or all the cultural things we have going on in our society, race, whatever. They're stuck here. They don't have the courage to face life and all their pain and turn it into their power. Everything that's been a painful experience, as much as it looks like I've just breezed through it, I've had to work through it.
And you express your journey. You express the difficulties of working through these things, and yet you still maintain grace and the beauty that you are, and you still claim your heart center, and you're growing more and more and more and more, and there is no end to that growing, right? It's unlimited. The potentials are out there beyond anything we can ever ask or imagine. And so we've got just a couple of more minutes on this episode. First episode of 2. So what we wanted to do was just kind of lay the groundwork of how you got where you are and how you really built a very successful business. And I saw a testimony. Misty is the ultimate no bullshit overcomer. somebody on one of your testimonies, the ultimate no bullshit overcomer. And I was like, yeah, that's who she is. It's straightforward. And to have seen you come from got such a small box to ultimate freedom and flexibility and grace and love and unconditional love. And like you said before, infinite love is probably a better term than if we had to describe it. So what is your last word here? This last message that you want to bring home today that we can open up with next week, because you just dropped a big thing, you're going to do movies and, we're going to see where you're going next time.
Yes. Yeah. Well, one thing how
people can find you. That's as well.
Okay. One thing I always leave people with is a question that I ask myself and my coaching clients every day. What would I do today if I wasn't afraid? Because most things are done out of fear. Fear of what people are going to think about us, fear about what's going to happen if you make the wrong decision, fear about if this doesn't work out, fear about if your dreams really can't happen, fear about what if nothing changes. There's just a lot of fear. So that's one thing. And then, what would it look like today if I unapologetically was myself? We live behind a mask, and that was my term and framework before the pandemic, but it now makes more sense to some people when I say it. And I'm not referring to a mask that just covers your mouth and your nose, but a mask like a whole face, whole body, hiding your heart, hiding your feelings, hiding your thoughts, hiding your beliefs. It was challenging to share my journey on social media because I still have people from that cult that are in my sphere, and to vulnerably share things that then got shared with my mom, and then she calls and harasses me for 3 days by phone, and I don't answer, and finally leaves me a message telling me she's going to sue me if I share my story. There were repercussions to my choices. But all I can share with you today is any obstacle in your way, the way to overcome it is to go through it. So what would you do today to get to be where you really want to be, the vision you really have for yourself, outside of the limitations, the box you've been put in, the black labels that have been put on you, the curses that have been spoken over you, if you walked in integrity to who you are and who God made you to be?
Incredible questions. And we will just open with that next time. Let's ask that question again in the beginning of next week. We'll be live at 1:00 on the same time, same place. And I'm
available on all social media platforms under Misty W Gilbert. I'm most active on Facebook's where I engage the most with my tribe, but I am on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I have a TikTok, Snapchat, Pinterest, you name it. Misty W Gilbert is what I'm on all of them. And of course, if anything has come up today as a question, I have a Calendly link on my website where I can send it to you. We can drop it on the show notes, but you can link and have a call with me. It's called Sharing Each Other's Lives. There's no agenda. It's a conversation with me. You can ask me questions. You can talk about your life, free coaching, or just a friend, or just pick my brain or whatever. Like, I love people. You have a story. I believe in you, and let's do life together.
So beautifully said. MistyWGilbert.com is also the website there. So we're out of time, and we will do this again next week. I'm so grateful that I had the forethought to have you on for 2. I mean, there's no way we can get through this in just 1 hour, but I've got to hard close right now. And I love you so much, Misty. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for watching the Charla Anderson Show. We'll see you next week. You guys be blessed and choose joy.
Parting is such sweet sorrow. The Charla Anderson Show. Encouraging you to stand strong and courageous with bold faith, no fear, immense hope, kindness, and love, especially towards yourself. Visit charlaanderson.com for replays, blogs, and more on her ever-expanding website, as well as watch her live TV show on winwinwomen.tv, Roku, Apple TV, and Amazon Fire. And so that we can continue learning together and growing this community of beautiful souls, we invite you to share the Charla Anderson Show with your circle of friends. Until we meet again next week, remember always, choose joy.